Yo, what is up? And welcome to another episode of In a Minute with Evan Lovett. This is actually episode number 100 overall, and was supposed to have a very special guest, a fun guest, and we're just going to push that episode back a week because, of course, this week, in wake of what happened to Los Angeles, I feel compelled to address that. I'm not going to script anything. I have some notes and some bullet points because there are some things I want to make sure I address, but these fires were one of the most significant days in modern LA history, one of the most significant days since I've been alive. And, emotions have been overwhelming, not just for me, my family, loved ones, people I've never met, people throughout Los Angeles, people throughout the world. This was a big deal. I'm not going to recap the info on the fires. Palisades, Eaton, Hearst, new one just broke out, Bell Canyon. I have thoughts on all of that. But one thing I want to address first and foremost, to all the victims, anybody who lost their homes, people who knows people who lost their lives, I am sorry, and I can't even imagine what you must be going through. I doubt that you're even watching this because why would you? But those of you that know people that were affected, my heart goes out. I saw my wife's response. She has a client in the Palisades who lost her home, and my wife is a very warm and genuine good person and worked hard on her part of that house, and not just for the loss of her work, but the relationship with the client and being there and seeing the video. She saw a video on New York Times feed, and the before and after, she's like, wait, I used to turn on that. I turn on that street to go to my client's house. And she contacts the client. Sure enough, the house is gone. And my wife broke down into tears. And it really affected her. And that's not even us. We are lucky. We are fortunate to be where we are. And we had a scare, right? Behind the IM studios, about 300 yards, what they call it? The Sunswept Fire, the Studio City fire broke out. And as you know, I walk across the LA River every day. We were 4 blocks away from this fire. And luckily, and thank you to the first responders and the firefighters and the host of people that are dealing with this, that are fighting these fires, that are protecting our communities, are doing their best in these tough conditions. That fire was knocked out, but you better believe we had bags packed and my wife was ready to go. I have thoughts on what I was going to do, but our neighborhood was definitely, half our neighborhood was did leave. Everybody was packed. And this is scary. This is unprecedented. And this is kind of what I want to address. A historical context for me goes back the number one most memorable and traumatic and impactful day in my life, a lifetime in Los Angeles. I'm 46 years old, 4+ decades in LA. January 17th, 1994, the Northridge earthquake, 4:31 a.m. I remember being woken up, abundant shaking in my house, going streak down the hall to my parents, see a dresser falling on my mom's side of the bed. Luckily, it didn't fall on her. But the rest of that day, that week, that month was a blur. Our house was red tagged. There was damage everywhere. Our neighborhood was destroyed. We were in the epicenter. I was born and raised in North Hills, Sepulveda. We're less than a mile away from the epicenter in Northridge. I'll forever remember right there on Lassen and Balboa, near the In-N-Out, across the street from the In-N-Out, a gas line blew up. And that sort of marked where the epicenter was. But it's all these things, these pieces of memories that kind of blur together. It was the first time I drove. My dad wanted me to go run some errands. He's like, you take the car. My mom's 86 Ford Tempo. I drove to a liquor store to get, I don't even know what. And I'd driven in the back of grocery store parking lots and things before. But this is the first time I had to drive anywhere, and especially for somebody. And I'll always remember that. And it was only because of the emergency. And that got me to thinking, this is probably going to be the first major event that my son remembers, the first local Los Angeles-based news event. And, he's been growing a lot recently. mentally, developmentally, uh, intellectually. We're proud to see that. And it's the first time that he's really actively involved in the story and watching the news. We are watching the news, a lot of internet, but a lot of news. Thank you, Alex Michelson and Marla Tellez, for being our guiding lights. Fox 11. Truthfully, KCAL's doing a good job. All the stations are covering it, but we have been watching Fox 11, and they are tirelessly reporting, and they have great people. Adam Kruger doing weather, Gina Silva on location, Haley Winslow on location. They're doing a great job, and we do need media. And that's a side conversation I'm not going to get into, but it's been a life raft for us and for my son to be able to understand and to grasp the magnitude of this. And that's what takes him back to the 94 earthquake. He's going to remember this. And in me trying to consume the news and watching my son consuming the news, in a way, I'm proud of him, but I'm also proud of our city and what I'm seeing from the people, whether it's donations. I'm seeing donations. Today is day 3, the day I'm recording this, by the way. You're watching this on Friday. Today is Thursday, and it's day 3 of these fires, and I'm starting to see donation centers are filling up, and bring your donations to other places, whether it's Pasadena, Altadena, towards the Palisades, and that doesn't replace anything that people lost, but it's a good reference point for the people of Los Angeles, and it speaks well of us. And another thing I'm seeing is at stores, in the streets. It's weird, it's different, but people are helping people, and people are talking to people, commiserating, sharing stories, asking what you need. So first, I do want to say I'm proud of the people of Los Angeles. Not first, but additionally, I think that's important, and I think it's good for my son to see, because I am putting it in that context, trying to see it through my son's eyes as well as through my own eyes of an event that's on the magnitude, the likes of which I've only seen now 3 times. The other event was the uprising, the riots, April 29th, 1992. Another day I'll never forget, the OJ cop verdict and the outbursts that happened throughout the city, really. And I was probably a little bit too young, too intellectualized, but the scale of it. And it's something that I hadn't seen. My dad had remembered the so-called the Watts riots, the Watts uprising, the rebellion. And he talked about that a little bit. I was too young to properly process it, but I know how big of a story that was. Along with the riots and along with the earthquake, this is that day, that event that's going to define Los Angeles, not as a city, not as an entity, but as a benchmark and just a date that you go back to where you're like, wow, this city is going to be a different place. I mean, again, the Eaton fire in Pasadena, I just heard this before I left, has destroyed more than 5,000 structures. We saw what happened to Palisades. Palisades was completely devastated. It's hard to believe those images. When I first was seeing those drone images, I was like, is this AI? Is this something artificial that's not really what happened? But yeah, that really happened. And so many people lost their homes. People lost their lives. People lost loved ones. And a lot of it's just stuff. And I hear that, these are affluent communities. These are the people that probably had insurance, and then the side conversations about insurance in California and State Farm canceling policies. And I don't know, maybe some of those things are true, but these are people's homes and their memories and just the stories. Everybody knows somebody affected. We almost lived in Altadena, before we bought what is our home now. We were fortunate to buy when we did. And it was because my parents passed away, and I was the only child, so I inherited their house, and we sold it, and that's the reason why we were able to buy our house. And I know that's very fortunate. But before we bought where we did, we looked in Altadena, and we loved that area. We loved this home. Altadena It's kind of a low-key area that people don't really talk about in Los Angeles. And maybe they wanted to keep it something of a secret because it is just this neighborhood, beautiful neighborhood, quiet, little bit too quiet for our taste. And that's why we ultimately opted back in Studio City. But it's gorgeous, and the people are nice, and the home was nice. And my wife was looking up the old address of the home. At the time she looked, which was Wednesday, the home was less than a mile away from the fires, and the fires have only raged since then. So I haven't even checked what happened on the house. But we almost lived in Altadena, and there's a bunch of people that do and that had to evacuate. And where people are going, I mean, I know folks that have opened their doors to other families. I know families that have had to evacuate from Altadena to Glendale. A close friend in South Pasadena was telling me, he's ready to go. Palisades, Santa Monica. I mean, we've all been affected by this, and it's devastating. And it's interesting because LA is the city of fires. I put that in a tweet, and it's true. Growing up, wildfires are unfortunately commonplace, whether it's the Woolsey fire, the Malibu fire that went from the beach to the valley, essentially, the Station fire. We just drove up to Big Bear and saw, a ravaged Angeles National Forest, or San Bernardino. And it's a fact of life in LA. It's a fact of life in our area. But this is different. This is on a scale and a magnitude that I thought was inconceivable. When I saw the warnings going out, 100-mile-an-hour wind, dry brush. This is the second driest winter on record in Los Angeles. Driest since 1964. These are the elements for a fire. We know, listen, Los Angeles, like I said, this is the city of fires, the city on fire, it's been called. And some of these fires are devastating, but they're usually single fires, 2 conflagrations, 3 perhaps. But this is something that's really on a larger scale. By my count, 8 different fires forming a ring kind of around northern LA, right? Silmar, Altadena. There's one in Sun Valley, Bell Canyon, Studio City, Hollywood. I'm probably missing something. They're popping up. Palisades, of course. And I put out an Instagram story that I felt pretty strongly that this might be arson. And I know that that's considered irresponsible for a journalist, or a wannabe journalist in my case, to say, to even put out there. But that's how I feel, because especially after the Studio City fire, let me tell you the story. The Hollywood fire, the Sunswept Fire, was at Runyon Canyon. It's 3.8 miles from our house. And that thing got pretty big pretty fast. That was on day 2. After day 1, there were no thoughts where we were of evacuating. But the Sunswept Fire got pretty big. And my wife's like, yo, we should leave. Neighbors were like, or my wife was like, we should pack. Neighbors were packing. People were texting me, calling me, literally dads, trusted folks. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to be one of those people that gets trapped in their home and you're like, bro, you should have left. We weren't in the evacuation zone, luckily. We were close. We were about 0.6 miles away. And I said, if I see those flames coming up over Mulholland, it's when I'm going to pack and leave. But the fire kept getting bigger, and it wasn't getting mitigated. And our neighbors were getting pretty up in arms. And you know how that groupthink is when people start riling other people up. It got pretty heated in my neighborhood. Terrible play on words. But people were leaving, and I was like, Leonardo DiCaprio on Wolf of Wall Street, I'm not fucking leaving. This is LA. This is where I'm from. I'm not going to my wife's parents' house in Rancho Cucamonga, going to watch LA burn on Fox 11 from an hour away. I don't want to get in the fire. I don't want to get burned. But that's how I felt. And I said, if it gets over Mulholland and the flames are coming down that mountain, I'll think about it. But then I saw that Studio City fire. And that's when a lot of people in my neighborhood were like, we're out. We got to go. We got to go. And it was closer than anything. It's closer than I got video. I walked it from this studio. It's a 2-minute walk, and my house is a 3-minute walk from here. So it's close, but that fire kind of clarified the fact in my mind that this is arson. That's a private residence. And again, just the sheer number of fires. And I'm not, listen, this is not factual. There is no evidence. This is how I feel, that there is an arsonist or arsonists or worse in Los Angeles. And I want to tell everybody, stay vigilant. I want to tell people, keep an eye out, because arson doesn't take a lot. It takes a cigarette and dry brush. And like we know, this is perfect conditions for these fires. Some psycho with a pack of cigarettes, a case of cigarettes, flicking them out the window every time he sees a dry brush. I mean, some of those are going to catch. That's how I felt. Now, we went to the fire department today, and I don't know if I said this at the beginning. If I did or didn't, it's worth saying again. Thank you, first responders, firefighters, city, county. I know the state sent people, Cal Fire, the inmates, the incarcerated people fighting the fire. There are a lot of people on these front lines, and these really are heroes. My wife has a cousin who's a police officer. She's married to a firefighter, and you know, it's kind of an interesting lifestyle. 3 days on, 3 days off, I believe it is. There's a lot of activity, but there's some downtime. It's somewhat of a fraternity, but when you're fighting those fires, that's bravery, and especially these wildfires to get out of control. So I want to say thank you to everybody fighting these fires. I know the governor's office, and I'm reading this because I don't want to miss anybody. Governor's Office of Emergency Services said there's 7,500 firefighting and emergency personnel deployed from Oregon, Washington, New Mexico, Utah, Idaho. Of course, the majority from California. Cal Fire, as I mentioned, Caltrans has personnel mobilized. CHP, the Sheriff, Department of Social Services, Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, as discussed, the Forest Service. So thank you, everybody, for your service. Today, I took my son over to Fire Station 78, the Studio City station that knocked down the fire and saved the day in Studio City. And we thanked all of those individuals, shook their hand, looked them in the eye, and again, I asked them what they needed. They said they had enough. My son wanted to bring them cookies. But I asked the firefighters, I said, do you think this is arson? And what they told me was there are 100 incidents a day, 100 incidents or calls a day to the fire. And fires are starting in a number of ways. Power lines, cigarette, accidents, a curling iron left on a paper towel that catches something afire, homeless encampments. And he says, I wouldn't rule it out, but we think that it could be an ember, and let's keep that in mind. He tampered down my theory so I just want to put that out there, that though I do believe that this is ours, because they keep popping up, and there was no wind, that Bell Canyon fire, there was no wind. It looks like a ring, and I don't want to get too conspiracy on, but I truly feel that way. He said, and I'm giving credit to the firefighters, they said it's probably not, but it could be. So I just want to put that out there. I like to report balanced. I like to report facts. This is speculation on my side, so I do want to temper that. I want to say that. And again, just a thank you goes out to the first responders, to the firefighters, to the sheriff, to everybody. The animal shelters, Pico Rivera Sports Arena, Pomona Fairplex, taking the large animals, Burbank Equestrian Center, the veterinarians. I saw a lady, I forgot her name, but she's taking in 39 pets in what was an abandoned veterinary clinic. So thank you. And all the people taking donations, all the people donating. It's all important, and it all reflects so well on Los Angeles. And I wanted to say thank you on that. And I think that that's the most important thing for me. I did an episode for only a minute on how to help. There are ways to help. There are ways to be aware. There are resources. But right now, we're still in it, man. And it's interesting because a lot of us are trying to live our lives. I'm getting work emails. I'm getting calls. Thank you to everybody out of town who's checked on me. But it's this weird balance of trying to be normal. I don't want to compare it to COVID. It's a different thing, but it's not. It's in the same category. And it makes it really weird. And going outside, you can't help. I mean, you smell the smoke. You feel it in your lungs. I do, at least. And it's a terrible thing to see LA burning. It's a really terrible thing to see LA burning, but it's a great thing to see people uniting, the people in Los Angeles to be great people towards each other. And I just want to remind everybody that we're all going through this in a different way. I got lucky. We had the fire close by. Thank you, firefighters, for putting it out. But you see your house and you're like, what would I take? You know, I have valuable things, baseball cards, my dad's old coins and pictures and Father's Day gifts and Mother's Day gifts and, you know, my son's stuff, my son's baseball stuff. You know, what do you bring? But you have one car, maybe two cars. It's just stuff at the end of the day, but I've loved what I've seen out of my neighbors, people talking and people asking if you're okay and trying to help. And keep that up, Los Angeles, because that's what makes us strong and what makes us special. Is LA takes a lot of has a negative narrative from a lot of people throughout the world, throughout the country. I'd love to say it's jealousy. A lot of it is, but we're a target for whatever reason. But people in LA know that LA is the place and that we are special people in a special place. And even though this has ravaged our community, can't even imagine what it's like to be in and from Palisades and Altadena and the places that were really hurt. But we are unified and we are all Los Angeles. And I am proud of what I am seeing. And I want to urge people to keep that up. That wasn't my message. I'm not like, stay strong, LA strong. All that is true. And I'm seeing it and we're living it. And I'm always out here trying to shine a positive light on Los Angeles. This was a really negative situation, but we're rallying and we're standing behind the city. And that's what LA is about. I always kind of say, LA is the city of the future. LA is the city of tomorrow. And we bulldoze our past to build a new future. And even though I celebrate the history and the culture and the past and the legacies of Los Angeles, and they are so rich and so powerful and worth telling, we're always able to create a new future. And that's what's built LA. And that's what's made LA incredible. And that's what's going to continue to make LA incredible. I can't fathom right now how we're going to rebuild Palisades, how we're going to rebuild Altadena, how we're going to rebuild any community, single house, 5 to 10 years. People are talking about the Olympics. People are talking about politics. I get it. I understand all that. But I do know LA is going to be back. And LA is going to be back stronger than ever. And LA's here. That was it's parts of LA, and we're going to help. And LA is unified, and LA is strong. And that's what I want people to remember, because I don't know if this is going to get worse. Today, Friday, the day this podcast gets released, for all I know, by the time this runs, there's 5 new fires. But the first responders and the firefighters are doing a damn good job. And we should be proud of them, and we should thank them, and we should be proud of ourselves. And we should be proud of Los Angeles, because I truly mean it. Los Angeles is the greatest city on the globe. So everybody, be strong, be vigilant, keep your eyes open, but help out where you can and support your fellow Los Angeles residents, and just be proud of this city, because, you know, this is by June, by July, we're not even going to be thinking about this, except for the sense that this was one of the most momentous days in Los Angeles history, one of the most momentous periods in Los Angeles history. But we're going to look at it as a point of inflection and see how we get through this, or we're going to get through this better than ever. So, again, thank you if you watch this podcast. I produced this myself because we had to push back our regular episode. I didn't produce it, but I said I don't even know how the quality is. But I really thank you for watching. Give me your thoughts. Shoot me a DM. You know I always answer the DMs. I'm always around. I'm always accessible. I'm always proud of this city. And thank you. Let's just be strong and be safe. All right, LA. I love you. Love this city. Love each other. Give your loved ones a hug and a kiss. All right, LA. It's been a minute.